All right, welcome back to another edition of the Forts Athletics Life and Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Inferno. Today I have a very special guest with us, Kelly Vincent, Assistant Track and Field Coach at SUNY Fredonia. Kelly is a graduate of SUNY Fredonia, as am I, so this is fun. I'm sure we'll have plenty of old Fredonia war stories to share. But Kelly, thanks for taking the time to come on today.
Yeah, no problem.
So Kelly, you just went back to coaching at Fredonia this past season as an assistant coach working with the distance runners. Now, there's nobody on the team that you were teammates with, correct? Because you're a recent graduate.
Yeah, I mean it's all new. It's all new faces to me, and it's different, but I like it.
So going back, because when I graduated in 2004, I was asked to coach the throwers that 2004-2005 season. So I had never, it was never a thought of mine to get into coaching. I was just teaching and enrolled in grad school. And I got a call from the AD asking if I was interested. And one thing led to another, and then I ended up coaching there for a few years. But it was weird because I was coaching my teammates, right? I had Jen Galvin was a senior, and Meredith, and Wally and Alan, all these crazy cast of characters that it made the transition very difficult for me. Now you going back because you're a little older, way more mature than I was when I was 22. What did it feel like to coach, coach in the uniform that you ran for such a long time?
I mean, I definitely love it, and it was definitely interesting at first because I didn't compete, I wasn't teammates with any of the kids on the team now, but I definitely knew a lot of them because coaching at St. John Fisher last year, we competed against them a lot, so I knew of them, and I kind of knew a little bit about them between what Tom and I would talk here and there at meets about, and I love the challenges. Every day is something different, and it's rewarding to see the progress that they're making and the progress that I make as their coach too, and I love every second of it, and I wouldn't change anything so far.
So when you realized that you were gonna have the opportunity to go back, what were your expectations? Because Fredonia for so many years, from the 70s, late 70s through the time I got there. So I feel like me personally, I cursed the program somehow, because that's when the downward swing happened. What did it when you realized, wow, I'm going back to Fredonia, I'm going to be coaching there, what were you expecting, those first couple, because cross country started in August, so you were there a little bit sooner. So what were your expectations, walking into your first practice, or, really getting established there as a coach?
I mean, honestly, I really had no expectations of the first practice. I was just kind of well, let's see where it goes, and let's just see what happens. I'm new to this program as a coach, and these kids are new to me, so I just kind of want to see what they think and what my first impressions are, and just kind of build off of that.
Because you had a celebrated career, Fredonia. I mean, you're on the honor roll in a few events there. So do you think the kids I don't know if they do their homework on coaches? I don't know, some of my kids at NAS have gone through the old YouTube videos and things, and have found stuff from 2005 and 2006, training videos. Did anybody know who you were, or know, oh wait, Coach Vincent, that's the same Kelly Vincent that's on our honor roll for our distance events? Do you think that played helped at all?
I don't know in certain ways. I know some last year, when I was on the team with those graduating seniors last year, I know they told the girls a lot about me and what I was about, and just what I did here at Fredonia as an athlete. I don't, whether they decided to do their own research on me or not is kind of their own thing, but I know some of definitely some of the older girls knew more about me than obviously the freshmen and the sophomores.
Yeah, because I know when I transitioned into coaching there, I was teammates with everybody, so I didn't have a very successful career like I thought I did at the time. I was on the honor roll. I mean, I've been bumped down. It was a couple years after the fact, but I was on the honor roll in the weight and the hammer, so I thought that was really cool because everybody else on the list was an All-American or national champion, and then there I was. So I don't. So there, I don't think because we were all teammates. But when I started coaching at NAS, I don't think because it was so different. Like it was like 12 years apart from my first experience at NAS in Fredonia. I don't think kids really are as interested in that stuff. Like I don't think, at least the ones that I coach, like I don't think they really cared. Oh, coach threw 20 meters in the weight, or he was a, decent hammer thrower. And I wonder if you think that that's like the street cred versus like actually having like coaching knowledge. Like I don't know if that, like if you thought about that at all, or if it was just okay, you know what, this is our first go around. The kids are here in the beginning of August, let's see what happens.
I mean, I definitely have thought about that, and I think it's a mixture of both. You want to be able to say, yeah, I did this and I did this and this, but you also want to have the knowledge of the event to say, this is why I was able to do this, because of the training that I did and the training that I've learned from other coaches to apply it to your own success as yourself as a student athlete. I think that a lot of the times, so I think there's two spectrums. On one end, people are like, well, this person did this, this, and this. Obviously, they know what they're talking about. And then there's the other half that's like, well, prove it. So I think that you have to be able to have that success as a student athlete and also be able to back it up with the knowledge of the event to pass that down to the next generation. And then I think it kind of clicks together for them.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons why I went to Fredonia. So my decision was between Fredonia and Geneseo. We don't need to get into the details of what happened at Geneseo quite yet, but when I visited in April of '99, so Fredonia had just won another outdoor SUNY championship. I think it was like their 20th or something in a row.
Yeah.
And Trevor Hitchcock was the throwing coach there, and he had already been inducted. No, he was going to be inducted that September in the Hall of Fame, and April of 2000. So he was going to be inducted in the Hall of Fame in September of 2000. So I was like, wow, my coach is national champion, multiple All-American, like he holds all the school records. Of course I'll turn into a good thrower. And I think sometimes better athletes, maybe if they don't have, like they can't verbalize how they did it, right? Because I'm 6'1", maybe. Like back then I was like 185 pounds walking on campus, and Trevor's like 6'5", 6'6". Like he was like 285 when he competed at Fredonia. So two totally different like body types. Like totally. I mean, he was a great high school thrower. Like he got offered to go play D1 football and things. So I didn't take that into consideration. Like I didn't know. I was like, well, my coach is awesome, so of course I'm going to be awesome. And I think sometimes it takes a little bit more like relationship development and establishing a culture rather than just assuming that the coach who's already there. Because then my teammates at the time too, they were all conference champions. So I was like, oh, this should be easy. Yeah. But I didn't know that they were conference champions like before, like when they were in high school or before Trevor got there, where I wasn't really good in high school. So
yeah,
like we said offline, I wouldn't even be able to get into Fredonia today with my grades that I had back then. So yeah, I think there's definitely a fine line between how, establishing expectations with your kids and, letting on too much about like previous experiences, because some like at NAS, like coach a national champion and the following classes like that they didn't even ask. It's more about academics, which of course are important.
Oh yeah.
But at that level, I don't think it's as meaningful as it would be at maybe like a D2 or a D1 program.
Yeah, and I also think too that sometimes great athletes don't necessarily make great coaches because, like you said, it's hard for sometimes a great athlete to separate the differentiation between, well, this is how good I was, but this is how good I want to make you. Mm-hmm. It's hard. Sometimes it can be hard to, I think, separate that line of what I did and only talking about what I did to passing on, but this is what you can do.
Right. So you were coached by Tom Wilson there, who's still the head coach, and Tom and I, we were teammates at Fredonia, and then we worked together too for those couple of years while he was coaching pole vaulters in the early 2000s.
Mhm.
So what was it like? Like he was your coach, and now you're going back to coach with him. So does that
Yeah.
like? So what are the dynamics? Like, do the dynamics change? I mean, obviously, it's not coach-athlete relationship anymore. Now it's coach-coach. Like, how did that feel? Like going back and working with Tom now, as opposed to being, yelled at by him on the cross-country course.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a little weird at first because I'm like, because I sometimes I'll go to Tom and be like, well, what should I do?
Right.
And then it's like, instead of having that like, what should I do? It's like, this is what I want to do. What do you think? Kind of like bouncing ideas off each other, and
Right.
it definitely it's definitely an interesting dynamic. But I also
Mhm.
like the idea of say like going to Tom and saying, what about trying this, or what about
Mhm.
maybe doing something along these lines of this to help this specific person.
Right.
you know. So I like the idea of being able to bounce off rather than, like you said, getting yelled at on a cross country course.
Right. So there were four of you on staff this year, right, at Fredonia.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, the season came to an abrupt end. How did you, or maybe I don't know how the conversations have gone. Like, so you had some seniors on the team. Like, what's the conversation like when you realize, you know what, you ran your last race at, Atlantic Regionals at NAS, or even before that at SUNYX? Like, how did that go there?
Um, it was a lot of mixed emotions,
Hmm.
like for the seniors, like I mean, luckily there was only two seniors this year, and
Okay.
they both seemed to close the book pretty well on their careers, like
Hmm.
especially someone like Aiden who had a phenomenal cross country season and ran really well at indoor SUNYX, and
Right.
someone like Kyle who also ran really well at SUNYX on the DMR, and
Hmm.
they seem to be able to be all right with closing the book. And then, you had some kids that are like devastated. I mean, they were all devastated, but you had some kids
Right.
that took it a lot harder than other kids
Hmm.
just because it's like they had just so much more they wanted to do this year. And, one of the things that all four of us kept saying is, you're all returning next year, and I would take this time just to reflect on what you did accomplish this year and maybe sit down and determine, what didn't go well.
Right.
And then from there, because we have 21 weeks until we come back. So a lot of it's like, I believe it's, determine what you want to do in the fall in cross country or in indoor, and really determine why it's important to you and how you want to get there.
Right.
This is the time to sit down and really reflect on what went well and what didn't, and then just using this time to make yourself a better person and athlete going into the fall.
So are there so for the two athletes that are graduating, are there like, have they thought about coming back? Like what, like do their majors, like I was an education major at Fredonia, so I reflect back on if this would have happened my senior year was the 03-04 season. So uh when campus was closed that second week of March, I would have just started my student teaching experience at Dunkirk, at one of the elementary schools there. So for me, I know I probably would have been devastated. Like I know I would have been like upset. I can't share everything that I would have probably gone through my head.
Yeah.
Um, but I knew in March that I was accepted into the grad school at program, or the grad school there at Fredonia, for curriculum and instruction. So I knew I was coming back the following year anyway to do that, because for teaching and all that. So I think I would have been okay with, all right, I have another year to train. Like I was really motivated back then. Like I continued
Yeah.
training after I graduated, and saw great improvement that 04-05 season. But like for the kids that are leaving, like do their majors lend themselves to coming back for another year? Like are they speech majors? Are they, what careers are they going into? What are their fields?
Um, Aiden's a journalism major, so that
Okay.
one probably won't fly.
Sure.
I know Kyle has a few job opportunities lined up for teaching, so
Sure.
I think he's ready to, move on from Fredonia and start his
Right.
teaching career.
Sure.
So no.
So with the athletes, so for the juniors that are coming back, the NCAA, I think it was the other day, announced that everyone has that spring eligibility back.
Mhm.
So do you think, like, I mean, obviously a lot can happen in 21 weeks before everyone comes back for cross country, and it sounds like it's so far away but as a coach, it's like almost not enough time. Like
Yeah.
when I was an athlete, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait till the first meet. And then when I was coaching, it was like, oh my gosh, like we need another week, we need another week, we need another week. So do you think for like some of the juniors, like depending on how things go, that they're going to be, returning as seniors, that they might think about that? Or do you think it's like too early to have a conversation with someone and say, hey, you know what, you probably would benefit from another, season after the fact?
Yeah, I think that conversation might be a little too early because I don't really know like what's really going on in their mind, like with their education. Like I know a lot, like some of them who are education majors, like they do have the option, but for some of my kids who are like sport management majors, like
Right.
that'd be kind of hard for them to pull off staying a fifth year unless they
Mhm.
decided to pick up another major.
Right.
But then they'd have to guarantee finishing that major in a year. So it's like 6 of one, half a dozen at that point.
Right.
So that's I feel like that's probably a conversation more for like the like next December, January type phase when
Mhm.
people are starting to like think about life after Fredonia.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because I was talking to somebody about this last week, and for those people who do want to come back, at a school like Fisher, like I'm Fisher alum, right? It's where I earned my doctorate, so I have, part of my heart is in Fisher. Um, but if I was coaching there, or like if I was still coaching at NAS, to encourage a senior to come back, understanding what the tuition is. Like if
Yeah.
they're coming back for speech, because that's a 5-year program, if they're coming back to be for their PT 5th or 6th year, like then I understand, like you're already going to be on campus, so you can just kind of like streamline in. But for someone like you said who's a journalism major or communications or business, like it would be difficult for me to encourage them to come back regardless of how good of a performer they were, knowing that they have to pick up the tab on an extra year
Right.
for a 10-week season, right? Because you wouldn't be able to start training technically, right? NCAA rule,
Right.
you can't just start in August and okay, we're going to start throwing shot and discus all the way up until March. Like you still have to follow rules. So I just wonder how like other coaches, because it's really, I've only talked to track coaches about this, like how other coaches whose seasons like kind of roll over, um, like softball or golf or baseball, like how those conversations have been going. It'd be interesting to see if it's like similar. Because if I was at Fredonia and we had like a decent thrower coming back and they were an education major, I might say, hey, you know what, maybe, let's think about it. Let's kind of map out what the year might look like,
Right.
because we can't start doing anything until like technically in January when the spring semester starts. But
Yeah. I also think the hard part with that too is it's so unique because it is a spring season. So I think it's hard, like you said, it's hard to tell a kid, maybe spend the extra tuition money and stay a year, but it's also hard to keep them motivated too because
right,
like you said, having to follow the NCAA guidelines, you can't start training them until January. So encouraging a kid to stay a fifth year, you also have to mention, well, by the way, we can't start doing anything until January. So it's how do you keep the kid engaged and how do you keep them motivated enough to want to be willing to say, I'm going to come back a fifth year knowing I can't compete until March and knowing I can't even practice until January on my technical event.
right. Yeah, because even so though, it would be, depending on the major, it would be awkward to start in January, like take the fall semester off and then try and come back, because most like like our grad programs at NAS, even though it's rolling admission, they encourage everybody to start in the fall, right? Or if you're really fortunate, you can start taking classes in like June and July for those summer sessions. And I remember doing that at Fredonia, where the first year I took three courses each semester because I just wanted to finish as soon as possible. So it was a fall, spring, summer,
Right.
and then I think one class in the falls, or two, maybe two. Yeah, it was two classes in the fall. So I was full time all the way through. But I wasn't competing. But to keep my grad assistantship, you had to be full time. I just wonder, yeah, taking that fall semester off and then trying to come back. It'll be interesting, like looking at the annals of sports in the next 5 years, because these high school kids that are coming into it, right? Like
Mhm.
right now you're still, I'm guessing, actively recruiting,
Yeah.
and you're trying to make the best decision for Fredonia based on a kid's junior season, PRs or, junior or indoor season. And, how's that been going? Obviously kids can't come on campus, it
Yeah.
might be weird to do like a Zoom, tour if you're walking around or anything. So how much do you like for you at Fredonia has, Corona, affected like the recruiting for that last group of kids that were going to make their decision within the next few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been hard because before the coronavirus shutdown, I had 10 overnight scheduled for kids,
Mm,
who were like making their last visits to kind of decide, is this a place I want to be? Like, is this a team I want to be on? And,
right,
having to tell them that you can't come because coronavirus,
right.
they were like, well, I still want to see campus. So what I did was, and I sent it to all the alumni, I made a recruiting presentation to like kind of bring Fredonia to kids and
Right,
be like, just saying, this is our team. This is what this is a blast from the past history, and this is what we're all about now.
right.
These are all our facilities and academically, and this is why you should choose Fredonia. And I linked all the majors to the
Mhm.
presentation and just everything that we offer them, and kind of like what I would do on a recruiting visit,
Right,
just online essentially.
right.
So
I mean, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, so it's just pretty much like a virtual tour,
Mhm.
but even then, like, you always have to ask yourself, is that still enough?
Right. Well, I think everyone's experiencing that. I was talking to a coach in, Michigan about it, and, she said that usually by this time they have all of their commits, because they try and get early decision because they have a lot of pre-med majors that link up with the University of, Michigan and Michigan State and things like that. She's in the Upper Peninsula in, Michigan. And, she said it's been really difficult because now kids are kind of like not hemming and hawing about it, but just not, I don't know what the right word would be. I guess not ready to commit.
Right,
But I mean, it's not like, if it's a decision is between Fredonia and Geneseo, you can't go to either. I mean, you can't go any place here in New York.
right.
Um, Lewis and Ashland, I mean, he said it's a ghost town. Like you can't do anything. So I just wonder, moving forward, how much, like I mean, Fredonia is a smaller D3 school. Like, NAS is tiny. We only it's like 2,000 undergrads. Fisher's not that big either. I just
No.
wonder how much of an effect it'll have, like more long term, not just with athletics, but in general. I mean, to turn around and go online in a week, like
Yeah.
that's really cool. Like we didn't have online classes in 2000. Like I don't even know. I mean, we had professors that still use like overhead projectors. I don't even know if you know what an overhead projector is. Like
I
for
still
the,
do.
so for those young people that are watching and listening, right? So we had overhead projectors in Fredonia. Like I can't imagine, Dr. Youngins or anything like that teaching, that intro to bio class
Yeah.
via Zoom or something. But I don't know if Dr. Youngins even teaches. I only went to a couple of those
Yeah.
intro classes anyway, maybe like
Yeah.
2 or 3 this semester.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is going to be a huge hit on everyone in the country.
Right.
I feel like, unfortunately, we're going to see a lot of kids come to the realization, and be like, maybe I want to go to school closer to home, or
Right.
maybe I want to not necessarily not go to college, but maybe, do something online or go to community college for 2 years. And,
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with that because the kid's still getting their education. But at the
Right.
same time, I think it's going to take a huge hit on everyone from a financial aspect for
Mhm.
sure.
Right.
Because people because of the fear that the coronavirus has, people are going to want to stay closer to home
Mhm.
because that's where their safety net is.
Right.
Whereas I'm trying to encourage kids to, maybe step out of that boundary a little bit and just
Mhm.
see where life takes you, because I feel like if we all stay in our comfort zones, we're not going to grow as humans, and we're not going to develop more.
Right.
What's that going to do for us as a society is what I keep
Mhm.
asking myself.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, my wife and I are homeschooling, 3 kids. So we have a 6-year-old who's in first grade, and we have, a 4-year-old who's in pre-K, and then a 2.5-year-old. And, I don't think, I mean, the oldest, like he'll remember, I think, like he pretty much lost out his first grade year. But I don't know if the other two, like how much it'll actually affect them. Like, um, actually today we have to go to the school if we want to, like they have packets to pick up, and it's just like the whole education system. Um, I think we'll have to reflect back. especially like now that schools are forced, especially for like graduation and things here in New York, like that they're forced to go to online learning, how that's going to change the whole, education spectrum, at least in New York State. I mean, if schools here can turn around in 2 weeks, hey, everyone gets a Chromebook and we're going online with Miss Hayes's 10th grade social studies class. That was my teacher, right? Like, maybe that just gives another option for kids where you don't have to go sit physically in a classroom all day. You could do it from your home, or you could do whatever. Just kind of, it just, there's a lot, like you said, there's a lot of questions that I think still need to be answered. And we're just kind of, day by day trying to figure out what we're going to do. But,
and I also think too, having to move to online learning, like, I get that we're in a global pandemic and all that,
right.
But I also think it's creating, I don't want to say laziness, but I think it's creating a lack of routine, like take your 6-year-old, for example, she's here, she.
Yep. JJ. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, little JJ's probably used to, getting up at 7:30 in the morning, eating breakfast and getting on the school bus and doing everything in school from that 8 to 2 or
right.
whatever time the school day goes. And then coming home and playing in the backyard, eating, like there's a routine there.
Right.
And moving to online learning, not just for little JJ, of course, but for everyone, we're losing that sense of routine.
Right.
So one of the things that I've been trying to work on is, how can, from a remote sense, how can I help establish routine for my kids? And yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've thought of that too. And
yeah, it's interesting because there were a lot of like I think before we went online, a lot of high school kids that I've coached that once they came back to Rochester, they're like, okay, coach, like when can we start practicing again? I'm like, listen, like we can't do that. Like we can't just walk on campus and start throwing. Like Fisher's like, they're like police or their security, they're all over the place, so you can't even get there. Everything's online, and they've actually transitioned to, I don't know if well, I don't know for whoever's going to watch this, I guess I don't know how many Fisher people will, but Fisher already made the decision to do online for the summer. So
really?
they're not even, so they're not even going to, yes, because my where I am at the U of R, my supervisor, so he's a professor in the School of Ed. So he was one of my professors during the doc program, and he teaches grad courses in the curriculum department and diversity. And he said that he was already told that the courses are going to be online because they don't want anybody at all on campus. And it just brings me back to like the motivation piece or the routine, because what we've done is we've set up, FaceTime. So I'm like, okay, put your phone down. One of the kids in Buffalo, he has a circle in his backyard. So I'm like, put your phone down and I'll watch you throw and I'll coach you like that. And I think it's just gonna expand more opportunities for people. But you're right, like the routine. So for us, because the kids are so young, like we have already had that. So my wife's an educator. I taught at high school. So we have breakfast at this time. We do a little electronic time. We clean up. We do our morning like school activities, what they call it. Then we have snack. We go outside. I mean, today we can't because it's pouring, but
yeah,
we come in, play, lunch, nap, and then do it over again pretty much in the afternoon. And for them, that works. And it even gives my wife and I an opportunity because I still have to work. Like I still have to, do my job through the U of R. So just because I'm home with the 3 little ones, like I still have to, produce my reports and things. And so does my wife. She has to produce lessons and activities for the kids that she works with at her school.
right.
So I think it just adds an extra layer of time management and creativity of how can you best maximize your time. Like, my supervisors know that, Charles is going to send crazy emails between 7 and midnight because that's when I can sit down for like 4 hours and really churn out, my data analysis and my stat stuff and whatever and programs that need to run for a long time. And like, they're cool with that because then they still have it the next day and, and just so on.
Yeah.
But for a college student who right now is still trying to take courses at Fredonia online, like it boggles my mind. Like, I don't know. I mean, I think you and I, we would have adapted to it, I think, but it may have been more difficult and challenging. Well, it would have been for me because there wasn't really social media. Like, I don't think you could have gone online in 2001, like 2002. Facebook, I think, was just invented. There wasn't,
Yeah.
no Instagram, Twitter, any of these other social media avenues. So I don't know how you could I don't know if we would have been able to even physically do it back then. I mean, I think you could have. I mean, we have syllabi, like, you still have to submit your paper on world history, whatever, or,
Yeah.
modern Western Civ 2, or, intro to 20th century, whatever, all those courses that I took there. But I don't think there would have been as much interaction like this because the technology wasn't there. Like, I just wonder if, wow, I could only imagine what, how it would, so how have you helped your kids do that then? Right. I just keep kind of blabbing on here. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
how, so you have a good core of distance runners. You have, working on getting a good group coming in for the fall. So how do you keep a 20-year-old engaged who should be on Zoom right now and within some course on campus, and help them keep a regular routine of, this, we would have been practicing from like 3 to 6. So this is when your practice time is. You do your class and your homework stuff in the morning. Like, it seems easy on paper, right? You just block it off and write it down. But in reality, like, what have you experienced for yourself from a coaching perspective? And then what your athletes have like reiterated back to you?
Yeah, so for me, I've been trying to keep up with all my kids. I try and touch base with all of them, and I've heard mixed things about the online classes. Like some of them have professors that expect them to log into like a Zoom meeting from like their 11 to 12:20 class every Tuesday, Thursday. So that helps them keep a routine. But then some of the professors are along the lines of, here's a paper, do it by Sunday, and then we'll reconvene on Monday for your next paper to write or assignment or whatever. So I think for them, it's kind of hard because some of their classes still have that structure, but some of them are kind of like a free-for-all in a sense,
Sure.
where it's like you have to do just assignment by Sunday, and maybe email me if you have any questions, and then I'll send you the next assignment on Monday. So I think that for some of them, it's very unique for them because they're like, some of them are very used to having structure. They're like, I'm going to go to class from here to here. I eat my lunch this hour break and then go to my next class and then maybe go for a shakeout run or something.
Right.
And now they don't have that. So it's, for some of them, they're still trying to wrap their heads around, how can I create a routine when I don't have structure? So I've just been trying to like bounce ideas with Tom and Will and Avi and just kind of see how we can help them create structure, essentially.
So with that, then, comes a little bit of like motivation, right? So I know you're still working on your grad program in sports psych. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Sport. So how does that lend itself at this time? Like what strategies, besides, you don't have to go into too much detail about what you're doing with the kids at Fredonia. We'll keep that, between us Fredonia alum. But for kids who are having difficulty trying to maintain like that structure, or even like for coaches, like what advice do you have for coaches to try and help them keep their kids kind of like on track?
One of the things that I think is a good idea is, other than just checking up on them every week and just saying, hey, how are classes going, and how's life treating you? Because for some of them, it's an adjustment just being back at home too.
Sure.
Because they're so used to just being on a college campus, being with their friends every day, being with their colleagues, and now that's all been stripped away from them. So one of the things that I think is a good idea for just coaches to do is, rather than just talking about athletics, just talk about them. I've taken this as a time to, really get to know my kids and kind of see, what they're into, what they're not into, and what just intrigues them. Because I think that the more that we know about them as people, the easier it is to build that relationship, like you always say, in, relationship development, and just it builds more of a bridge between the coach and the athlete, and it also lends them to want to trust you more and to break down that wall and let you into to their world. I feel like a lot of times as coaches, we're always, I want you to come into my world. But I feel like sometimes we forget to ask them, I want to come into your world for a day. Because it's been, oh God, I'm so old. It's been like 3 years since I've been out of Fredonia as a student.
So old.
So things have changed, obviously.
Right.
So I don't know like what the academic world at Fredonia is necessarily like as a student anymore. So I think it's good to say, you know, I want to be in your world for a little bit. You know, walk me through what you're struggling with and let me see if I can help you.
But does that, even though you've been out, I mean, you're so old, like I'm 38, so I graduated in '04. Is there a, like, is it helpful though? Because like, do the kids see that maybe you might be more invested because you did come back home, right? Like you know, you had ties there being, you know, an athlete and you graduated from Fredonia. Has that been helpful, do you think, during this process that, you know, we know Coach Vincent's going to be there when we come back because, you know, that's her home. And I've been wanting to ask you because I just wonder sometimes like how coach or how athletes perceive their coaches who graduated from the same school. Like I never asked anybody like when I was at Fredonia, like I don't think they cared, to be honest. That particular group. But I just wonder, like from your perspective, do you think that's been helpful? Like, oh, you know, Coach Vincent was here. She, you know, Tom coached her, so she kind of understands. So she could kind of be like the middle person, like, you know, rather, you know, it's like a fine line. But I think you might be able to be closer to it because of not just your age, but you know, being coached by Tom, like you understand him a little bit more than, you know, maybe some of the 18 or 19-year-olds might.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways it's helped, you know, because kind of just because like, you know, when I was on the team, you know, on the women's side at least we were really good, you know, finishing fourth in the conference in cross country, finishing third in track, and you know, just knowing what it's like to be there at that high of a level, I think does help them because, you know, I did a lot of work to get there. You know, knowing the sacrifices that I made as an athlete and knowing what I did to get there, I don't necessarily like to word it in, well, this is what I did.
Right.
Even though sometimes you have to word it in, this is what I did.
Right.
But I like to word it in the sense that, you know, this is something that we could try, you know, just to see what happens. You know, as a coach, I'd rather see my kids try and absolutely fail than to not even put themselves out there. Because I feel like risk taking is a part of college athletics. And, you know, the reason that I think when I was on the team we were as successful as we were is because of the amount of risk that we all took.
Right.
And
so with that risk then comes, and I want to just kind of bring it back to the recruiting piece, because, you know, when a student's making a decision to go, you know, Fredonia, Buff State, Geneseo, Brockport, whatever, I mean, there's a little bit of a risk, right? Like, because you know what you're seeing on paper and academics, you know, you have to go to class. Like that's, you know, pretty universal, I would argue. And I think people would argue back with me on that. But like when you talk to families and student athletes, like is it helpful? Is it more helpful that you can go into more detail about Fredonia because you went there, like you were a student there? Like, you know, I think that maybe the proximity of age might help a little bit because maybe most of the professors that you had for your program, they're still there. So you can, it's more of a, hey, you know what, let me take you to, you know, to Todd's office, or let me take you to, you know, so-and-so's office, and we could just sit down and talk with them, as opposed to like trying to go through like more like the formalities of stuff. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely been easier for me to sell Fredonia because I was a student here. I mean, going back to when I coached at St. John Fisher last year, I mean, that was a whole new world for me. So trying to sell like the pharmacy program or the nursing program, all I really knew about it was that it was funded by Wegmans. You know, here with like all the programs, not just exercise science, you know, I know a lot about the College of Education. I know a lot about the sport management program and a lot of kids who want to minor in athletic coaching. I mean, I have that minor, so it's easier for me to talk about it. It's easy for me to, especially kids that want to study exercise science, it's really easy for me to sell that because I live in that world.
Right.
You know, I ran Todd's lab for 2 years and, you know, and did a lot of research with Todd, and it's easy for me to talk about the research I did and turn around to a kid and say, you can do something like this if you want to. Right. You know, there's no limit to what you can do in a research world. You just have to show that there's actually research there.
So what are some next steps before, because I don't want to keep you too long here. We've been, you know, rambling about Fredonia for a while. Well, my little ones downstairs were starting to run a little wild. So what, you know, what are next steps for for SUNY Fredonia. I love SUNY Fredonia. Like my heart will always bleed blue there. So you guys have a pretty good group coming back. You have a good staff, a lot of support, new athletic director, making a lot of cool changes. Like, what can, us as alum look forward to? You need to open the store up again, by the way. So I missed the orders the last couple times. Maybe now would be a good time to do that.
Yeah. Trying to open up the cross country store pretty soon.
Yeah, I know, right? Since the season's going to be starting before we know it. But like, what are next steps there for, like, what are some cool things that you, Tom, Will, or Avi are working on that, we can look forward to, from my perspective as a very proud alum, and, some of the, recruits or, families that make the decision to come to Fredonia.
Yeah, so one of the things that I started doing on our team Instagram is like team trivia crack, just to talk about like the history of the program, and it's pretty interesting to see like how many people actually get the right answer, get the wrong answer. And so I've been doing a lot of that, and I'm going to continue to do it because I've gotten a lot of positive feedback on it.
Right.
And then every Tuesday right now we're doing a Meet the Blue Devils release, so figured now's a good time to start introducing our returners and what they're about, why they chose to come to Fredonia, and advice that they lend to incoming freshmen. And starting probably around May 1st, I'm going to start releasing recruits.
Sure.
So like to meet the recruits. So I mean, right now we got a lot of talent coming in. I mean, picking up one of the best long jumpers in the state, picking up one of the best pole vaulters in the state on the men's side is going to be a huge pickup for us, and our quest to win a team title eventually. It's coming.
Right.
And, just, I'm always looking for feedback from alumni. So, I mean, if you guys have any feedback or you want to throw me a good trivia question, I mean, the one about the 1993 New York State meet came from Jim Ulrich himself.
I missed that question too, because, and I knew it was, in the back of my mind, I was like, I know it was Trevor, because I know he scored 28 points that meet. But then the teammates, two of the teammates that you listed too, I think they're also Hall of Famers.
They are.
So I was like, okay, so he had 3 Hall of Famers on the same team at the same time. I know Jeff was like a distance guy, and then I can't think of who the other. It wasn't Neil. It was
I think it was Dorsey.
Dorsey, and I was like, wait a second, like who? Like, because Trevor, he only did 3 events. So I was like, the most he could score is 30, and I know he did 28 that meet, and I missed it because I went with Jeff Winden, because I thought he would have done like the 5 10K or like 15 5K 800 4x8, all these other like different races. But no, I like that, and I've missed a lot of the newer ones. So as an alum, that just tells me that I need to start paying more attention to kids that graduated post 2010. But I do have some other ones. I mean, obviously not about me, because there's nothing really interesting there besides like what my GPA was.
Same.
But like my teammate Jen Galvin, I think she graduated in 05. We went to nationals in 05 in Waverly, Iowa. That was a really interesting experience. That's probably that's a whole episode in itself.
Yeah.
But I think she won the most individual SUNYAC championships and state championships out of any Blue Devil. I think.
Really? Oh.
I think I know she won 14 for sure, between indoor and outdoor. But then back then we had the state conference.
Yeah.
So she won the discus at SUNYAC's one weekend. Then the next weekend she won at state. So that was 2. She did that 3 times. So she won the discus 6. A bunch of hammer titles. She snuck a couple weight titles. Shot put one, like miraculous one, when I was coaching her. But it's just interesting, like looking back at how many great athletes have come out of, Fredonia, where it's just like a rich. I was just talking to somebody the other day about it, like how rich the history is, and now it's nice that it's starting to pick up again. Where like my teams were just, I don't know what happened there. I mean, Tom could probably fill you in more. It's not appropriate for the podcast, but no, I'm really looking forward to more of those questions. I'll shoot you some, see if you like them, especially about Jen, or even Julia, Hobson, Williamson.
Yeah, I actually have one about Jules. I just got to figure out when I want to like release it, because I've been trying to do like like a blast in the past and like a kind of present day, like alternating between just to spice it up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also nice too because I actually started it just because I wanted to try and keep, our kids engaged and alumni engaged too, because one of the things that Tom and I have been trying to kind of figure out is how can we keep engaging our alumni. And I know a lot of our alumni do have social media. So, and if I've had alumni reach out and say, this is a really cool idea and everything. And, I think that in this time too, it also keeps our recruits engaged, especially for the kids that are coming in. They can be like, well, seems like a really rich program of success. And this is something that I really am excited to be a part of.
Right. Just, before I let you go, I don't know if you can like leak any information or anything, but and there's going to be a Hall of Fame induction this fall. Is that correct? At Alumni Weekend 2020?
I believe so. As far as I know.
Any news on any track alum that might be inducted? Because I know the qualification guidelines kind of changed. Like you have to be out for at least 10 years now.
Yeah.
So that makes us any alum that graduated pre-2010. And there's a few that come to mind, like immediately come to mind that I've submitted over the years. But I was just wondering if you had any inside track, if you knew that any track alum were going to go in this year again.
Yeah, I'm trying to think because Brittany's not out of college long enough. Colin hasn't been out long enough. Anna hasn't been out long enough. Nick and Jules are already in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, because the last three, the last three submissions I've put my teammate in, Jen Galvin. She like I said, she won I think 6 discus titles, 4 hammer titles. She was the record holder before Julia came on campus, and it would have been so cool to see because Jen graduated in 2005, and then Julia's freshman year was the fall of 2005. So they didn't cross paths. But Julia immediately rewrote the throwing record books, and then Nikki did also with the discus and stuff like that after the fact. But
Nikki's also hasn't been out long enough to be in the Hall of Fame either.
Yeah, so there's so I'm just wondering, like from my perspective as far as throwers, like I will never get in unless I like donate enough to name a building after us. Our family.
The Dr. Charles Inferno College of Education.
Yeah, seriously, I wish. I don't know. Well, we'll try. We'll keep that on the wraps. But yeah, it's interesting because you looking back, like how many All-Americans that have been from Fredonia, and like Ginger Kincaid comes to mind too. She was a teammate of mine where she was she finished second in the high jump her freshman year, indoor and outdoor. So she's another person that would be, I think a good candidate to go in.
I thought Ginger was in the Hall of Fame.
No, she's not in the Hall of Fame yet. No, Ginger, and then
Jen Galvin.
Sarah Height was another athlete that was on campus when I was there. I was as a coach. She was a hurdler. She was an All-American, I think, in the hurdles.
Multis, right?
60 hurdles, I think, 55 hurdles indoor, something like that. So there's a lot of us still pre-2010 that not me included that probably deserve to go in. But Kelly, I appreciate your time today. We'll definitely have to catch up on SUNY Fredonia stuff in the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I look forward to talking with you more and off the record podcasting.
Absolutely. Have a good day.
You too.
Thanks.
See you, Chuck.
Take care.